It's the Happy Families podcast. It's the podcast for the time-poor parent who just wants answers now.
I think that there's an argument to be made for encouraging kids to persist at something that we know that they'll be grateful for, that they've expressed interest in and love for previously, if we can just get the activity right.
And now here's the stars of our show, my mum and dad.
Hello, this is Dr. Justin Coulson, the founder of happyfamilies.com.au. Season 2 of Parental Guidance coming soon to Channel 9. We can't wait to share everything great about the brand new season of Parental Guidance that's coming up. I'm here with Kylie, my wife and mum to our 6 children, our 6 daughters. Kylie, as we start off the school year, parents are enrolling their kids in all kinds of activities, extracurricular stuff, got to enrich them, got to help them to have fancy and fulfilled lives doing all those things that we know are going to make such a difference in their lives and their well-being, sport, music, art, drama, all that kind of stuff. And it's around about this time that we usually have questions from parents who say, how do we get this right? Like, how many activities should they be doing? And what if they don't want to do the activity that we know that they should be doing? Or what if they start an activity that they really want to do and they want to quit after they've only been doing it for 1 or 2 weeks? How do we figure this out? I thought that today would be a good day to answer those questions. I think I'm going to start with the first obvious one. How many extracurricular activities should our kids be doing? I don't know if you and I agree on this or not. We seem to have a little bit of conflict in our relationship about this one. What's your thought?
So in the early days, we came up with this great plan. Well,
Yes.
at least we thought it was great because we had never
perfect.
done it. That the children would have 2 extracurriculars each until you realise that 6 times 2 equals 12. And
That's a recipe for bankruptcy.
that, not only that,
And exhaustion.
time poor.
Yeah, like you
How do you physically do it all? And then you're dragging X amount of kids along to watch one child explore and enjoy their experience while everyone else is moaning and groaning because the last thing they want to do is sit in a waiting room.
So we decided that we were going to have the kids do 1 musical instrument and 1 sport. And so we chose swimming because we want the kids to be safe in the water and they could choose their musical instrument until we realised that was too hard. And so we basically booked them all into swimming lessons on the same day at the same time.
Which was brilliant.
And we booked them in for music lessons with the same teacher, one after the other, until we realised that doesn't work very well at all. And then we had one child that didn't really want to learn that instrument. She wanted to learn something else. And we had kids that were starting to get better at swimming because they were bigger and older and they had to go into the squad instead of the swimming lessons. And it started to fall apart. It got really, really messy.
Well, and your way of seeing things is if the kids want to do it, let them do it.
Well, I want them to have enriching experiences, even if it's going to break me financially.
Well, it's breaking you financially, but me physically, because you're often not home and I'm the one trying to navigate the challenges of a very busy schedule.
And then that means that we come home late and there's no dinner organised and everyone's tired and it's really, really hard to get this right. So for the average parent who's only got 1 or 2 kids or maybe 3, I still think that the idea of having them involved in 1 sporting activity for health and teamwork and fitness and all that kind of stuff, I think that's a really good thing to do. And I really believe that getting them involved in some kind of art, some kind of music, some sort of drama, something creative. Yeah, I think there's value in that because if you're going to do a sport, it's usually quite structured. It doesn't necessarily always lend itself to a whole lot of creativity and a whole lot of strategic thinking. You get in the pool and you swim as fast as you can, or you get on the bike and you ride as fast as you can, or you get on the field and you run as fast as you can. And I don't want to be too reductionist. I know that some people who are big sporting aficionados are going to be upset about what I just said, but as a general rule, I'm being fairly simplistic. Whereas when the kids are learning music, they're learning to be creative. Or if they're doing drama or art, they're expanding the repertoire of.
You're using different sides of your brain.
Different
entirely.
Yeah, completely. So I reckon that that's a really good idea, but we've got to go deeper than that. We've got to explore other ways to help our kids to have that enrichment and what is the right amount? How are we supposed to do it? We also need to talk about when to start. I mean, I talk to some parents who've got their kids into tutoring and into different sports and maybe dancing or gymnastics or whatever it might be from a really, really young age. So I reckon when it comes to kids and extracurricular activities, there are some things that they want to start as soon as possible for safety, such as swimming. So we want to teach our kids to swim, full stop, end of story. But in terms of more organised kinds of sports and activities, more structured activities, I don't think that there's really good research evidence to support getting our kids involved in that until they're at least 8, 9, maybe even 10 years of age, perhaps even a little bit older again.
And we've watched this time and time again, every now and again, because we've got so many children. The little kids have seen their big sisters involved in things and want to get involved. And it's just never been a positive experience while they're young.
Right. So research on kids and competitiveness shows that that's not in their best interests. So I think we want to hold off on anything competitive for as long as possible. And I know some parents say, yeah, but my kids are going to have the edge. They're going to be so much better at it if they start younger. Again, the research evidence doesn't support that. They may develop a reasonable level of competence, but if you get a kid playing, let's say, a ball sport from the age of 8 and another kid starts at 11, within a year or two, that 11-year-old will have caught up without any problems at all. You look at someone like Roger Federer, one of the...
Well, it's life experience, right?
Right.
They're much better equipped with their hand-eye coordination. They're more physically developed.
Exactly.
and have better strength and coordination. There's so much more available to them because they're actually older.
And so speaking of the older thing, Federer's mum was a tennis coach. He hated tennis. He didn't want to play tennis. He wanted to be involved in all sorts of other sports so long as it wasn't tennis. And it wasn't until he was in his late teens that he decided that he wanted to give tennis a shot. And we all know how that turned out. He's essentially the greatest tennis player in the history of the world. A really, really incredible phenomenon, Roger Federer. And he didn't start until late. We have other incredible success stories like Patrick Johnson, the sprinter, who started in his 20s and went on to win gold medals for Australia. So,
I think it comes down to motivation.
Exactly.
If our children actually want to participate and want to do well at something, then they're motivated to do it. And regardless of their age, they're going to move forward in really positive and strong ways.
Okay, so let's do a quick stop down here and just summarise what we've talked about. First off, in terms of getting kids involved, yes, but wait until they're older, especially for structured and competitive activities.
But if you want to start saving from an early,
yeah, that's probably what I'm
age,
doing. Number 2, in terms of how many activities, our recommendation is that you do as many activities as you can comfortably both afford from a time perspective and from a financial perspective.
So we totally disagree on this, and I'm going to say less is more.
Yeah, we do disagree. I just want the kids to do as many things as they can because they want to do them. But you've got to be able to afford it, and you've got to have the time and capacity to run them around and get them to all the places that they're supposed to be. And that's a little bit of a challenge.
You spend your whole life in a car instead of actually allowing them to just live their lives.
The third thing that we're going to touch on, that I think we will agree on, is that we want to follow our children's interests. So we've got...
You know that you've got it right when your kid is sitting in the back seat literally 3 weeks after season's finished and they're asking you when the next season is.
Yeah. Or when you're saying, hey, it's time to go, and they say, I know, I'm already in the car waiting. Because they're excited for it. They're dressed, they're ready to go. So we've got one of our kids doing acro. I don't even know what acro actually is. But I drop her off every week and she loves it so much. Like, she just loves it. And I never really wanted to have a child doing whatever this acro thing is. And
it's called acrobatics, my honey.
Yeah, I know what it is, but I don't get it. I don't actually get it.
She's on the silks and she's on lyra and she's on the hoop and she is in heaven.
Yeah.
Doesn't have a clue what she's doing at this point. She literally has done 12 weeks, but there was a demonstration in the shopping centre the other day when we went to buy her school shoes and it just stopped her in her tracks.
Yeah.
These girls are amazing what they can do. And I just sat there and thought, if that was my kid, I would be so impressed.
Whereas swimming, I mean, we are dragging these kids out the door and saying, you need to get in the car, you need to swim. We live near the beach, we spend time at the ocean, swimming is compulsory. And they're like, no, but I don't want to swim. Like, it's such hard work to get them doing that.
It didn't used to be. But unfortunately, because of the moves that we've had, we haven't had consistency with the coach. It makes such a difference.
So that brings me to our next point, and that is relationships. Relationships really matter. So you don't just follow your kids' interests, but you also follow their relationships. If all of their friends are playing a sport, they're much more likely to want to play that sport.
Well, Emily had no interest in a team sport whatsoever.
Right.
But one of her little friends was putting together a team for OzTag and asked if Emily wanted to join in. And Emily kind of shrugged her shoulder and said, yeah, okay. But 3 weeks after the season's over, she's like, Mum, when's OzTag on again? I really want to play. She's missing the connection with her friends.
Yeah.
And she's missing the opportunity to learn and grow. She knows that she's not particularly good at it. She's only had one season, but she's so excited about going back.
Yes.
And that is perfection in my books.
Okay, great. So we've got to follow their interests. We've got to follow the relationships. Let's change it up just a little bit. What about when they want to quit?
So this was really, really hard for me in the early days, especially when budgeting was so tight. It was hard for me to recognise that we've just spent $250 on their uniforms and their sign up, and now they don't want to do it anymore.
Do you remember when I was riding my bike on the velodrome? I was competing, and our eldest daughter, Chanel, said, I want to ride with you. So we got her involved in the club a little bit, and we went out and we bought her a bike. And when you ride on the velodrome, competitively, you can't just ride any old bike. You have to have a track bike.
Which can't be ridden any other way. It's only for the track.
So this is a bike that has no brakes, and it's a bike that has a fixed gear. So if the wheels are spinning, the pedals are spinning, and you can't stop unless you're just sort of pushing gently against the pedals to slow it down until eventually you stop. It's a specialised piece of bicycling equipment only for the velodrome. So we went out.
And then you've got to buy the Lycra.
Got to buy the Lycra. Got to buy the pedal, like the shoes that clip into the pedals. And the gloves and the helmet. So we were poor uni students at the time. I think I had spent maybe $1,100, $1,200 on setting her up. Plus she had to become a member of the club and all that sort of stuff. It was a huge sacrifice to get her cycling. But she was young and she was competing against maybe 3 or 4 other girls who had all been cycling. Their dads had got them into cycling at about the age of 5. And they were.
And it wasn't a particularly big club, so she didn't have anyone her age or at her level.
Yeah. She was the worst by a mile. Yeah. She was about half the speed of everyone else. It was embarrassingly, awfully, horribly bad for her. And after 3 or 4 weeks, she said, Dad, I don't want to do this anymore. And I remember just going, you've got to keep trying. You've got to practice. Like the more you practice, the better you'll get, and soon you'll be able to. And I was doing all the motivational talks, and I was doing the big pump up speeches. And I was like, just come along for one more week. Let's just give it one more go. And eventually, we were having major conflict over it. And within about 6 weeks, she was out. She was completely, fully out. We spent all that money, and eventually we sold everything and we got a good portion of the money back, but not all of it. And it was a really expensive and painful exercise, but sometimes you've just got to let them work it out for themselves.
In the early days, it was actually really, really hard to let them change their mind because of that financial outlay. And for some families, where you're stuck in that place, and it's really hard. But what we've recognised as we have gotten to a much more comfortable position financially, firstly, but secondly, have learned so much as parents through this process, is that if we can work with our children's interests and their relationships and their skill set, their strengths, life is actually great. They enjoy life more. There's more energy around everything that they're doing, and what they bring back to us is better. And so sometimes it can be really, really frustrating to sign up and then have them pull out. But you don't know what you don't know. Our kids don't know that they're not going to enjoy X, Y, and Z unless they give it a go. And if we have the capacity to allow them to actually experience and experiment, then they're better for it.
The last point that I want to make as we wrap this up is every now and again you'll have a child who doesn't want to do something, and I think that it's okay to push a little bit now and then, even if they don't have the relationships or the competence and skills, and they don't even necessarily have the interest. And that's because over time they will be grateful. The case in point is music lessons. So at the moment we're dealing with a 12-year-old who's saying, I just don't want to do it. I don't want to learn an instrument. I don't like this instrument. I don't like that instrument. I don't enjoy it. I don't want to be doing it at all. She's happy to sit on the piano and bang out some chords and sing at the top of her voice, but she doesn't want to do the work. She doesn't want to exercise that conscientiousness that's required to practice and learn the skill. She doesn't want to literally do the work. And what I'm finding in my conversation with her is, I need you to trust me on this. One day, I think you're going to be really glad that you've persisted with it. that you stuck with it and that you made it happen. Because one day you're going to be like your big sister and you're going to be able to pick up the guitar and go down to the street corner and busk and make some money. Or you're going to be able to sit around with some friends and play the piano and all sing. Or you'll be able to do these things and you'll be so grateful for that skill, for that capacity, for that knowledge that you've accrued over the years that we've paid all that money for. And so we've got to tread carefully and we shouldn't be forcing our kids. But I do think that there's an argument to be made so long as our motivations are right and we're not doing it because it's about us and our ego. I think that there's an argument to be made for encouraging kids to persist at something that we know that they'll be grateful for, that they've expressed interest in and love for previously, if we can just get the activity right.
And I guess in line with that is an acknowledgement that timing is really important. So Emily wanted to do gymnastics, but she wanted to do it when she was about 6. And against all of our conversations and considerations around starting children that early, recognising that she's a ridiculously busy kid, we decided we'd give it a go.
And it was a disaster.
It was an absolute disaster. She lasted 2 lessons and literally ran out there of the second lesson, screaming at the top of her lungs, saying, I hate this, I'm never coming back.
Right.
But 2 years later...
as an 8-year-old rather than a 6-year-old.
And recognising and learning more about her and how she works, checking in and realising that gymnastics is quite structured, but acro is not. And so I put her into acro classes as an 8-year-old instead of a 6-year-old. Less structure, and her body is just in heaven.
Yeah, she's loving it.
She is loving it. We go to the shopping centre and I have to stop her from doing handstands and cartwheels in the corridors of the shopping centre.
So now we've just got to work out what musical instrument she's going to play because she's old enough for that and I think she's ready.
She wants to play the violin.
Oh, no. We really hope that this has been a helpful podcast. The Happy Families podcast is produced by Justin and Rulon from Bridge Media. Craig Bruce is our executive producer. The take-home message: get the kids involved in extracurricular activities if you can afford it and you've got the time, but let their interests and their relationships be the motivation. Push them now and then if you know better, but please make sure it's not about your ego. Please make sure it's really about them, and wait until they're old enough. Can't wait to share more with you on the Happy Families podcast tomorrow as we go back to an interview from our Little People Big Feelings conversation, our summit, I should say, with Reenie Jane of Go Zen. Little kids, big feelings, if that's what you're struggling with, you don't want to miss tomorrow's podcast episode. And for more information, please visit us at happyfamilies.com.au.